Can a device be built that can transform this high-frequency energy into usable power? I believe that T.H. Mori did build such a device. This has inspired me to conduct my own research and to build prototypes. How the radiant energy device really worked might shock a few people once the facts become known. Present-day alternative energy researchers hoping that one day power will be obtained from the energy that runs the cosmos. In reality, this dream proves to be a lure to its followers, beyond the limits of credibility. A quagmire of unsubstantiated hypotheses exist, so bottomless and unreal. The facts of many newly conceived energy concepts are wholly inadequate, lacking justification, and incapable of throwing any light on the promise of inexpensive, abundant sources of energy. Nature is my best teacher. Within one of her classrooms, there are mineral samples that give out pure electrical energy. They are the radioactive rocks. Did the cosmic rays create this storehouse of energy by reacting with the two densest materials on Earth, thorium and uranium? It is quite possible that these two elements found in nature derived their energy from the cosmic rays. A small percentage of these rays are capable of penetrating, without loss, hundreds of feet of solid rock. Nikola Tesla's investigations brought him to the conclusion that the Earth was being showered with tiny particles, each carrying so small of a charge that we justify in calling them neutrons. This is in Tesla's own words. He stated that, quote, they move with great velocity, exceeding that of light, unquote. The success of Mori's radiant energy converter relied on a detector that looked like a white, powdery, stone-like material that he found in a railroad car located in Spisco, Sweden. From military records, we know for certain that this white material was fused silica. Silica is the chemical name for the simple oxide of silicon, silicon dioxide. Mineralogists call this compound quartz. This is normally found in nature in its crystalline form. Finding this mineral in a fused state can only mean one thing, that what Mori found was a metamic quartz. A metamic is a crystalline material that loses its crystal structure due to radioactive destruction. For this to occur, the quartz had to have contained trace amounts of uranium and or thorium, which is why it is found in a fused state. In a more or less amorphous state, the so-called metamic state, owing to its radiation damage from alpha decay of these impurities. Over the course of hundreds of millions of years, alpha decay doses as high as 10 to the 19th power decays per gram can occur, which may lead to the complete amorphization of quartz structure. If you like all the fine details on how Mori's device converted what he loosely called radiant energy, you will need to purchase my book, Radiant Energy Power Generation. I only brought a limited supply with me today because of weight restriction at the airport. It was much more important to bring more hardware. If you cannot buy a copy today, you can buy one online on my website. The website is www.nuenergy, spelled NUENERGY.org. You can also find details here about my own private Inventors Weekend that will take place in October and will be held in Houston, Texas. You will see more of my hardware at this upcoming event. Don Smith will be presenting his latest research. Calvin Ballman is demonstrating his completed power wheel for the very first time. His energy wheel is a combination of many different types of alternative energy motors and goes well beyond the Testostica device. You won't want to miss this event. Only pre-registrations will be taken. This is a private event. Product distribution will be discussed at our nightly social gatherings. While at my website you'll find all kinds of excellent information that you cannot find anywhere else. You can also write to me by snail mail at New Energy Horizons, P.O. Box 22, Rumney, New Hampshire, 03266. For almost 15 years now, I have carried out many experiments. The fruits of this research are now just ripening. Many fruits are within grasp, but they are not yet quite ripe for the picking. The intent of revealing my progress to the world is to ensure that this work is not done in vain. Through my many writings, I have attempted to explain the many facets of radiant energy and how it is possible to draw usable powers from it. If radiant energy can be given to the world, then humankind will have the potential to reach heights not yet dreamed of or conceived. Today, I freely give to you the results of my life's work. Together we can reclaim our independence. Before I move into my public test, I would like to clear up the myth that has been going around about Tesla's electric car. The details of this car was revealed to me by Tesla's last known living assistant, Arthur H. Matthews, in 1986. In his audio tape sent to me, he states that special primary batteries with replaceable zinc electrodes powered Tesla's electric car. This car had a fluid transmission and could travel at 90 miles per hour. The electric motor could run on the batteries for 300 miles before you had to pull over and attend to the batteries, and then you were on your way for another 300 miles. Matthews claimed that there were enough spare parts in the trunk to run the car for 1 year. And what I'd like to do, the audio that he sent me is about 20 minutes long. I'd like to play that to you because it's very historical, and I would like for you to hear it and judge for yourself what Tesla really did in the last 10 years of his life. Contrary to the myth that's going around that he fed pigeons in the park, he may have done that on his lunch break every once in a while when he was in New York, but the last 10 years of Tesla's life was very productive, and it was very private years, and he accomplished many great things that people aren't aware of. But Arthur Matthews shared with me on audio tape, and I'd like to share that with you today. Okay, the tape's in. I'm going to play the tape next. It's about 20 minutes long, and I'll get back to a short speech after it, and then we'll get into the fun part, the hardware. Uh-oh. What's happening here? This isn't working.
Right.
It's playing, but then it's stopping. It's rewinding.
Province of Quebec, Canada. To understand properly the first part of the story, we will need a map of the province of Quebec, Canada. It was early in spring that Major Henry Sanford of New York City came to Quebec with a number of friends. One of these friends was Nikola Tesla. Major Sanford owned a large camp in the Quebec woods, not far from a place called Lake Edward. Major Sanford invited me to go with them to his camp. We met in Quebec City at the old Lake St. John railway station. The Lake St. John Railway at that time operated the railway between Quebec City and Chicoutimi at Lake St. John. Major Sanford had a private train consisting of 2 coaches and a baggage car. The baggage car was loaded with electrical equipment. One item of that equipment was a 75 kW generator set. This generator was driven with a gasoline motor. Due to the fact that Major Sanford's camp was located about almost 10 miles from the railway station, and the only way to get there was by means of a footpath through the bush and a portage on which canoes could carry material. And of course, this meant that everything that we had to be carried by hand. And then to make this more convenient, most of the heavy materials, such as the 75 kW generator, had been taken apart and packed in small containers. We left that morning from Quebec at around 8 o'clock, and I don't remember exactly what time it was when we arrived at Sanford Station, but it was around noon, I believe. Arriving at Sanford Station, the train was placed on the siding and we unloaded the baggage car. And I will try to remember all the members in the party as we arrived at Sanford Station. Major Sanford and Mrs. Sanford, there was a train nurse, Miss Kidd, and Tesla, and myself, and 12 Indian guides. The head guide, or chief, was a man named Gros Louis. The material was divided up amongst us, and we all had as much as we could carry. Some of the parcels were very heavy and required 2 guides to carry them. There was no particular rush, so we could go as slow or as fast as we pleased, admiring the beautiful woods as we walked along. So finally we arrived at the camp sometime late that evening. My first job on arriving at the camp was to put the 75 kW generator together. When I completed the power plant, we then built an exact model of the Tesla transformer, which he had built at Colorado in 1898. I don't remember the exact date, but I believe it was in 1898. This transformer was to transmit power to the earth without using any wires. After the transmitting transformer had been built, we then built 3 other transformers to receive the power which would be sent from this big transformer. The first one was located about 10 miles away in the bush. The second transformer was located at Lake St. John, near Discharger. And the third transformer was built later on at TeslaTech, which is on the River St. Lawrence. For the purpose of making any required adjustments, Tesla first used a nearby transformer, which was about 10 miles from the transmitter. Power was then sent to this 10-mile away transformer, and the power sent was considerable and convinced Major Sanford that the idea was practical. After proving to Major Sanford that his wireless power idea was workable, Tesla then turned his attention to some new things. First thing was radar and the war-preventing idea. The radar was in fact a part of this war preventer. It was the guide. TV was demonstrated, and a voice-operated typewriter, and other things which I will mention later on. Tesla had offered his idea of radar to the American government, But whoever it was who investigated the idea did not think it was practical, and so it was turned down. One of the showpieces at Stanford was a gold wire aerial. This was used to receive shortwave programs. This gold wire aerial was actually constructed by the Indians. I showed them how to do it. And it was placed on top of two tall trees, which were about 65 feet apart. It was a gold-plated aerial, as I said, a cage-type aerial, which was used on the battleships of that time, with 12 wires separated in the middle by a ring 12 inches in diameter, tapering down to each end to 2 inches. At Stanford, I constructed a number of shortwave receivers, which the Major presented to some friends at the local hospital at Lake Edward. Dr. Couliard was one, and he also presented one of the receivers to Joe Louis, the Indian guide. I should say the chief of the Indian guides. Kessler also built the microwave receivers, which were very small indeed. One of the ideas of Kessler was a metal analyzer. This was very useful in finding out what certain pieces of metal were. I first used this at Ottawa in 1969. A large lump, chunk of metal had been discovered on the beach near Neuville, and this piece of metal, weighing something like 3,000 pounds, was taken to the Albuquerque camp, where they tried to find out what it was. It was a kind of a mystery, and they were not able to find out what it was at Albuquerque, and then it was shipped to Ottawa, to the National Research Council, where they also did everything possible to find out what it was, but they were not able to do that. That is to say, they could not be certain of what it was. The stories went around that it fell from the sky, and it was a part of a spaceship, or something or other of that kind, but no one could say exactly what it was. And so, in 1969, I was invited to go to Ottawa and test this with the Kessler analyzer. I still have, in fact, this invention of Tesla. Well, to shorten the story, I certainly found out what the piece of metal was using the Tesla analyzer. Another wonder was a small, portable TV machine. This TV machine could see through stone walls. In other words, like a camera, a special kind of a camera, you pointed it at a wall, and it could see anything on the other side of the wall. It recorded this on a tape of some kind, and then you wind it up, and you could transmit this picture which had been picked up to a stone wall and send it to a small screen. This screen at Stanford was mounted on the wall, and it looked like a colored picture of some kind. I said in other tapes, oil painting TV, because when it was operating, it's exactly what it looked like to me, because it was like a picture in a nice frame on the wall, and there were no visible wires to it. But Kessler had a small box that he was operating of the cable, and as he operated this, he could change these pictures that were seemed to be coming from nowhere on this frame of some kind. It looked like, as I say, it looked like an oil painting, and I had called it a oil painting TV. He had a camera with him during our trip through the bush, and he had pictures recorded of us and the guides carrying parcels walking through the forest. And he sent this picture to this oil painting picture. And as I say, it very much resembles an oil painting because it was in color. That's the first I have heard of the TV. I remember this was in 1932. Another marvel is a small recording machine, something like our modern tape recorders, but it had no moving parts. It had no tape or anything else. It simply recorded and would play back the recording at a push of a button, just exactly like our tape recorders. But it would record for an hour or so and play back, as I said, what was recorded without the use of tape or any moving parts whatever. There was no motor in it. Many of these ideas had been conceived by Tesla many years before, but he did not have the opportunity to develop them. And here at Sanford, there was a beautiful place, a magnificent place, a beautiful workshop which had been constructed by Major Sanford, well equipped with almost everything you could think of. Another fearful, fantastic idea which Tesla developed at Stanford was his dark idea. This would also prevent war. But would it? I believe that it could also be used to make war, because the equipment could be carried in an airplane and it would float over a city and put it to dark. Not a bit of light anywhere would show. This is, to me, a most fearful idea. You turn on a switch and everything goes dark. There would be no electric lights, no lights in your car. The headlights would not show. You could strike a match. It would burn, but it would not show any light. No form of light whatever, instantly, the moment the switch is closed. So then, Tesla said that if the war started and the switch was turned on, the war would not be able to continue because nobody would be able to see. I wonder what it would be. I wonder if it will ever be used. Can you imagine what would happen in a big city, say at noontime? Suddenly, not a pick of light anywhere. The sun would suddenly die out. Headlights of cars would not turn on, and so it would be a terrible mess. And this apparatus, according to Tesla, could be put to work and control the whole nation, either a city or a village, town, or the whole nation, all of America, all of Canada, at the press of a button. Is it a good idea? I really don't know. Apart from the very big things used all over the world, inventions of Tesla, there are a number of little things, very important little things. For instance, the ignition system, which I believe is used in almost every car in the world. It was invented by Tesla many years ago, but certainly all the cars that I can think of use the same identical ignition system which was invented by Tesla at the beginning of the century. And no one has been able to find a better system. The speedometer, which is also used in almost every car in the world, also invented by Tesla. So was the ship's log. Most ships in the world use the Tesla log. The hydro system, that is to say, the method for driving generators to produce electricity from the waterfalls, was one of the great inventions of Tesla. The first power plant in the entire world was Niagara Falls. which was built by the Westinghouse Company in 1895. It's one of the few things which had Tesla's name on it up to recent years. Tesla also developed a number of ideas for helping overcome pain in a human being, such as sciatica, rheumatism, and all kinds of things like that. And he uses a small electrical vibrator. Another one of his great inventions was the electric car. He built the first one in 1897, and he drove from New York City to Buffalo, New York. And it had an average speed of 94 miles an hour. This car, if it was built today, would cost 1 cent a mile to operate. And it would cost practically nothing for repairs, because apart from the mechanical parts that is to say the wheels and the steering apparatus, whatever, those are the only moving parts, the engine in this electric car is a small alternating current motor which runs at a tremendous speed of 30,000 RPM, and this is reduced to 1800 by means of a fluid transmission, also the invention of Tesla. The whole electric car is a magnificent piece of work, and it could be put in use today and save the public hundreds and billions of dollars now wasted in gasoline and oil and spare parts. I could give a few details about this electric car. You see, it does not use a storage battery. It uses a special primary battery. And if you know anything about primary batteries, you know that the only part of a primary battery which fails is the negative plate. In these little dry cells you use for your flashlight, for instance, it's the zinc which gives way. And when that gives way, the battery goes dead. Well, now, Tesla invented a completely new kind of primary battery. And in this primary battery, if the negative plate wears out, it can be replaced even by a child in a few seconds. And the battery, when installed in this electric car, will run that car 500 miles before the battery needs to be attended to. And when the battery does need to be attended to, it will take you 10 minutes to remedy whatever has gone wrong. And the spare parts are all in the trunk. You have enough spare plants to keep that battery running 12 months of the year. You do not have to stop at the service station. You could run 500 miles, for instance, at 74 miles per hour, if you were allowed to do it, of course. But you could run this car, say, 50 or 60 miles an hour, right across the country, and probably not have to stop more than 15 minutes to attend to the battery. Well, sometime in the future, somebody will, no doubt, build this Tesla electric car. Perhaps it would be when we have no more fuel oil or gasoline. I don't know how long the present oil supply will last. It certainly will not last forever. So we will have to have other means of transportation. Will it be by the Tesla electric car? If you have read my book, The Wall of Light, you will know the first part is the life story of Tesla. This story was written by Tesla himself. And you will note in this story that Tesla gives full credit to God for his ability to discover some amazing new ideas in the Bible.
Okay, that was a little bit boring, but no, I don't. Some people fall asleep here, but I felt it was important for historic documentation that the Tesla electric car and some of the myths that I've been hearing, that it'd be cleared up and show that Tesla's last 10 years were very productive. And even to this day, from some of the descriptions of Arthur Matthews, we still don't have the technology that he was working on back in 1932 to when he passed away. Well, anyways, it's on videotape now, and hopefully this will clear up the myth around the electric car and that it was not powered by radiant energy. I had hoped that it would be, but that's not the reality of it, and it's important that the truth be told. And I feel that the Tesla electric car, even though it wasn't powered on radiant energy, that was just as amazing being powered on these special type of zinc batteries they invented. I'm wondering where did this technology go? Who has it? Who's burying it? Maybe we'll never know, but maybe somebody out there will reinvent the Tesla electric car. The performance of this vehicle seems impossible. However, the characteristics of Tesla's unidirectional electric current can generate short duration, high energy that will generate high frequency oscillations when dumped through an inductive coil. This unique principle makes possible many seemingly impossible innovations. It was this principle that was at the very heart of Tesla's magnifying transformer, also known as his DC transformer, which Arthur Matthews called. Edwin Gray also used this principle to run his high-frequency motor. The Edwin Gray circuits do not produce over unity, contrary to the rumors. His circuit is powered by battery current that is stepped up by a vibrator and transformer. This is rectified and charges a capacitor. The capacitor is part of a resonant tank circuit, the load being the inductance. If you read the patent, you'll notice that the conversion tube in his later patent, it was to be used in a high-frequency environment, and he specified an inductive load, not a resistance load, and that's why, because the inductance was part of the tank circuit. The oscillations are triggered by a pulse and arc gap, which operates on a negative resistance. The rod and screen have a quenching effect on the tank circuit. This is a super efficient system. A radio frequency coil can be used as the inductive load in light bulbs, and you can even submerge them in water and they still work. And that's the purpose of this device here, is to demonstrate this new type of current. Also, rumors going around that this form of energy coming out of the Gray and Mori devices is cold. It's not true. The wires don't heat up, but it's not a cold energy. This type of electrical current flows through gas better than it does a solid. Tesla taught us this a long time ago. The details of the Gray motor circuit can be found in my newly released book, Radiant Energy Power Generation. The effects of the high frequency that the Gray device generates will be demonstrated here today with real working hardware. Mori's device worked pretty much the same way, except that the radiant energy and not a car battery powered his circuitry. The radiant energy powered ion valve is similar to the Gray conversion tube. The difference is that there is not an internal arc gap. The arcs that my circuits use are standalone poles and arc gaps. The poles and arc produces radio oscillations, but for this to take place, you need to use a hydrocarbon between the gap. However, the ion valve in the circuit replaces the hydrocarbon is not required. The hydrocarbon is not required. If you want to pump energy into the tank circuit other than what the battery supplies, then you will need to add a substance to the tube that will evolve radon gas. My research has revealed that the energy devices of T.H. Moire, Alfred Hubbard, Reverend Antonio D'Angelo, Joseph Papp, and others all contained a source of radon gas. They may or may not have realized that this was what they were using as their fuel. We'll never know this for sure. However, what we do know for certain is that they all used radium in their energy devices. You can read all about this on my website. Some old articles are posted for your perusal. When my prototype is ready to be demonstrated, I too will show how radon can be used to generate electricity. Demonstrations will have to be performed in private until my device obtains an exemption from government restrictions. The facts show beyond doubt that radon gas was the fuel source that has powered many so-called free energy devices. You can say that these devices ran on the energy of the cosmos, or the cosmic rays. It is these rays that created radioactive thorium and uranium that we find in the ground. High-energy cosmic rays are really neutrons, as Nikola Tesla had discovered. When a cosmic particle reacts with either thorium or uranium, a radioisotope is created. This is why you see a consistent percentage of U-235 all over the planet. This percentage represents an accumulation of cosmic ray bombardment over the lifetime of our world. Nature offers us this fuel that can be used to obtain electrical power with no moving parts, and it is out there for free for the taking. We do not have to split atoms to harness the storehouse of energy. Nature has already safely done this for us. What is cold electricity that I've been hearing lately on the internet and through various contacts? This is one last subject I'd like to address before I begin my demonstrations and public test here today, is the interpretation of what is being called cold electricity. It just frustrates me to no end when I hear theories out there that have no scientific basis to them. How on earth can electricity be cold? Electricity is a flow of charge. It is not a thermal state. Are we talking about a wire that loses thermal energy as a secondary effect due to the passage of electrical current? If so, this is nothing new, nor is it strange. Have you ever heard about electrostatic cooling? A United States patent was granted to a fellow named Oscar C. Blumgren Sr. If anyone is interested, the United States patent number is 3872917. This patent utilizes the principle of electrostatic cooling. It makes use of high voltage, negatively charged probes that are placed near the hot object, which is grounded. This extremely simple system uses very low power and is very efficient. This invention could also be used to remove thermal energy from a wire. It works because negative air ions carry the heat away with them and are dumped into the ground. It should not be too difficult to design a unit that could chill electrical wires to the point where a frost would appear. What has just been described is a solid-state electrostatic heat pump. There's no mystery here, and certainly there's no new science involved. Anyway, I have put in my 2 cents worth and will not ramble on any further here. People must believe what they must. On to the very good part of my lecture, which is the hardware, which you probably want to see next, and rather than listen to this rambling, but I found it necessary to put in the speech so that, clear up some of the misconceptions. Yeah, I'll take one question, but I'd rather take questions after the hardware here. Give me a look here again. I don't have it memorized. U.S. patent number 3872917. It's Oscar C. Blumgren Sr. Okay, let's have some fun with the hardware. Okay, what you see here is if anybody out here wants to do their own experiments, in here is housed a high voltage, high frequency power supply that I have found to be the very best for experiments over the years. The circuitry can be found on my website, and you can download it for free. or you can buy it from Information Unlimited, which puts together a very good circuit these days. However, you might want to put in your own case, because some of these experiments I find sometimes the energy backs up, and it destroys the potentiometer in here, and some other things. One time I fried a flyback, and I found the cure for that is to in between the windings and the flyback transformer, to put in some silicone sealant, and that seems to take care of the problem. And I've designed my own. I was calling it a valve, but I think it's probably an ion gate. Basically, it's a type of one-step voltage multiplier. But what makes this unique is that I'm using better components. I'm using fast-switching high-voltage diodes and higher value voltage. It's at 20,000 volts rather than 15 kV that's typically used. And I'm going to show you the nice high-voltage spark that this produces for your experiments. Let me put on some gloves, because you don't want to get caught in this. Just your muscles freeze up. And I've got another multiplier that I put together with these components, and I've got about a million volts in connection there. And when I fire that up, the whole earth ground gets charged, and there's sparks flying off the wall on the second floor, and it's just phenomenal. I did this once. I didn't have such a efficient system back then. I don't know, about 20 years ago when I first started playing around with high voltage, but I built a nice stack, and I was pumping energy into the ground, and next thing you know, there's sparks flying off the wall. I'm getting a knock on the door, and neighbor asking me, "Is there sparks flying off your walls?" And the stereo speakers were clicking like crazy, and of course everything was going in my living room at the time, and of course she knew what it was, and I don't know why, but I was pumping so much energy into the ground that day. I had a combination of high voltage going in the ground with a Tesla coil, and black helicopters started circling around, and then I found out what black helicopters were all about. They weren't the military black helicopters. Apparently, I was pumping so much energy into the ground that it showed up on the utilities company's grid system as some kind of a leak. But luckily, I had shut that down before they located where it was. And needless to say, my landlord said, "If you don't stop your strange experiments, you're out." So this is going to be quite loud here. Oh, get zapped. This is quite a zap. You can see this is an excellent spark gap to experiment with, and it draws very little current. Talking about a few milliwatts, and it's excellent when you build a self-sustaining system. It's very important that your oscillator is very efficient, because in a system, see, this is going to fill. This is in the radiant energy system, you need the high voltage to excite the tubes, and basically a non-radioactive device. Non-radioactive device. A lot of people are concerned about radiation with good cause. If you don't have respect, don't know exactly what you're doing, then you could poison yourself. So if anybody wants to get into that aspect of it, I'd be willing to. I have an understudy now coming up from Canada that I'm going to teach him how to do it properly. I can do it. I can process radioactive material at this point without any shielding, because I know exactly the process. I have my own processes that I have developed, and I use certain kind of cathode tubes emitting certain frequency, a certain wavelength, whereas I can speed up and transmutate the materials that I'm working with to something safe. And I'm not splitting the atoms. I'm doing exactly what nature does. These tubes, they put out, I'm not sure, but I don't want to make a claim on it, but the results that I'm getting indicate to me is that these tubes are producing cosmic ray particles. And that's what's speeding up the process naturally, like nature does. But in a nuclear reactor, what they're doing is they're splitting atoms. And when you split atoms like U-235, you come up with all kinds of radioisotopes that are deadly. But my goal is to produce a material that produces a lot of radon gas. Because I find that radon gas can be used directly as a fuel source. It can be converted direct into electrical particles in what I'm calling a Perreault valve, or whatever you want to call it, ion valve, a radioactive ion valve. But essentially, what I'm putting into that tube is pure radon gas, a pure radon gas emitter that's just producing the radon gas. And this radon gas, you can make it produce heat, thermal energy, or you can, with the right elements in the tube, it'll directly convert into electricity. This is what Mori was doing. This is what all the other inventors were doing. But they used radium chloride, which can be very nasty, producing gamma radiation, everything, and you're exposing yourself. And the thing is, in the radioactive decay that is harmful to you is one wavelength of UV light that the material is producing. And that one wavelength will split the DNA helix, and that's where you end up with trouble. But if you know what you're doing, you could produce materials that produce radon gas that do not produce that one wavelength, so you're safe. But you have to know exactly. I don't know about. I know that there's mines that people go down and pour it, but the only problem is radon gas. You don't want to breathe in because it turns into lead, and that's the problem. And you get some radioisotopes of lead, and so there's a certain respect. You don't want to breathe in this gas. It's like you don't want to breathe in hydrochloric acid or fluorine gas. When you work with it, you should really know what you're doing. However, Mori's first experiments with just a long ground rod, what he was actually doing is he was attracting in the radon gas from the soils. And when you charge a wire negatively, it will attract radon gas. And a lot of people don't know this, but his device does not work in every location. And the reason for this, the conclusion I've come to, is that there wasn't enough radioactive ores in the soil. The radioactive ores in the soil is what produces, your radon gas. This attracts the rod, and basically what you have is you create an atomic battery. You have your antenna and ground. The radon gas is attracted to your ground rod. And that radon decays, producing alpha particles, which are right in the range of 5.5 MeVs. And as those particles come off, they're positively charged helium atoms. They leave a negative charge on that ground rod. Now the atmosphere has a positive charge, and that's due to the radon gas in the air emitting the alpha particles. So essentially what you have there is you have a capacitor, and this is shown in Mori's basic circuitry that was sketched by somebody in the lab. I believe it was sometime in the 1950s. I don't remember the exact year at this time. It is in my book. But basically you have an atomic battery there. It charges up the capacitor, and then it's discharged into a pulsing type circuit, which Edwin Gray does. That's what his circuit is. And it goes to a coil and a tank circuit. And you have high frequency oscillations. And these high frequency oscillations is what lights up the light bulbs. And this type of current, you take it's stepped down to low voltage, almost no voltage, but you have high frequency, and you can light up a bank of light bulbs with this. And because the nature of the high frequency current, it's called the skin effect, travels on the outside of the wire, doesn't go through the wire, so you don't have heat until it goes through the light bulb, and essentially it goes better through a gas, and you light up the light bulb real bright. Basically, the Edwin Gray device was doing the same thing, except for using a battery. And how much kilowatts that you can get out of this system is how well your discharger is made. Edwin Gray, in his first device, used a spark gap. Obviously, the spark gap was not producing over unity. Actually, it was wasting, and it was corroding away the spark gap, and heat was going off in the air, and all kinds of stray RF, which is against communication laws. So he devised a discharger, very efficient discharger. And the screens in that patent, you know, you have to look at the patent, which is you can see on my website, or you can look at the book. And basically, the screen has a large surface area, and so when it's discharging, it's hitting a large surface area instead of hitting one spot and wearing out, you know, wearing out the electrodes. However, in the pulse and arc configuration, what it is, in the pulse and arc, he used copper and carbon, or 2 carbon rods. But the only thing is, to get the oscillations, you had to put a Bunsen burner in there to burn some kind of a gas, and the oscillations shot right through the ceiling. In the Gray device, he used a second spark gap. But even that was kind of inefficient. And what I did is I went beyond. I developed an advanced discharger, somewhat like the Gray device, and I did away with the second spark gap. And what I'll show is, I don't know if you can all get a peek if you do it rather quickly. And you don't want to touch it because it's going to be high voltage. But you'll be able to look in there and see the type of discharge. And what I'm doing is I'm using a slight bit of air. And I'm using, they make these now for fish tanks, and what reason why it has a cord, it's not to charge the batteries in there, but it's when the power goes out, it kicks in for the fish tank, for the bubbler. But, you know, it can go on for hours and hours. It's very efficient, much more efficient than burning the spark. And all it needs is a little bit of air, and when you look in there, without a little bit of air blowing in there, you just get an arc across there. But with that little bit of air, you don't need the hydrocarbon, and you don't need the second spark gap that Gray was using. So I've developed it more efficient. And when I start selling these, you know, this is the benchtop prototype. Looks very good. I'm going to have ceramic caps made so that any high-frequency system, Tesla coil, high-frequency motor, this will be able to operate at large wattages. Light up a bank of light bulbs, you know, powered from the radiant energy from the ground. Now, why do I use a radon source in the tubes? You know, because a lot of people they're afraid that all forms of radiation are dangerous. But I've discovered safe forms of radiation. You know, my own processes, and I can transmutate artificially what nature does, speed up the process. I can take U-238, turn it into another isotope by a certain ray bombardment, just like Mori did. He called it all kinds of things. But, you know, basically what you're doing is speeding up nature's process. You're not splitting the atoms, but I'm after to get that fuel source that nature offers us, that storehouse of energy. And if you read Nikola Tesla's radiant energy patent, he explains this, and both radiant energy patents are basically the same. And he's explaining how the cosmic rays hit the particles and, you know, get ionization. But, you know, he hadn't developed that, you know, to the point Mori did. What Mori did went into Tesla's research and took it a step further. And that original stone that he found, I got him started with it, which is a Metamic quartz. And we know that because Mori's device was duplicated by his son, John Mori, through a military contract. And they analyzed the Mori stone, and it's fused silica with fossil remains in it. And basically what he has is a really nice source of radon gas in there. And contrary to what's written, radon gas will react. It's not inert. It's only inert at ordinary temperatures and voltages in the environment. But you can make it react with different elements to produce different results. You can get heat. There's another way that you can get electricity directly out. That's what Mori was doing. That's what Hubbard was doing. That's what Father D'Angelo was doing. Pabst was doing his motor. I think he could run that car for 3,000 miles before he had to recharge the cylinders. If you read that patent closely, you'll see that he used thorium on his electrodes. Mori's discharge device used thorium shellacked on one of his electrodes. But I find this safe. Well, the other way safe too, but I think this will be the first unit that I introduce in the public because it doesn't use radiation. Well, at least it doesn't use it in the tubes. It's in the ground. It's safe where people feel comfortable. But once this technology is proven and demonstrated, I don't think it's going to go into mainstream right now. It'll be you folks that pick up an experimental unit and validate that this is truly how these devices worked. And I think once you guys become comfortable with it and know what's going on, is really going on, that the public can be introduced to this stuff. And then the next step is, by then I'll be able to prove that that what I'm doing is safe. And it's only going to happen when I have all this high gear equipment. But very fortunate, I hooked up with this guy that's been with Bell Labs, now Lucent Technology, and he's been doing research on Mori device for about 20 years, and has access to some of the Bell Laboratory Fletcher files, and he's going to be working with me, and he's bringing in some expensive equipment, and he's going to be able to validate what I'm doing. So that cuts out some of the expense and maybe a few years off. But the very first thing I want to do is get this user-friendly thing into the researcher's hands to validate it. And then from there, I think just everything's going to bloom when people realize the real source of power is radon gas. It's a fuel. It's a storehouse of energy that's been given to us from the heavens. It's the cosmic rays. It is the energy from the cosmic rays. The cosmic rays has created in the ground. It's just that we're using it in the wrong way. We're splitting the atoms, and we went off that the destructive path. It's obvious we're destroying what was given to us, splitting in two and doing something else with it. But if we do it nature's way, then it's safe, and that's what it was. And the thing is, when we do it nature's way, it doesn't blow up. And so in that form, we're given a real safe, clean form of energy. But somehow I believe that the grand designer put that into the design. If we were going to use it for destructive purposes, then it was going to be deadly to us. And But anyways, let's get on with the demonstration here. This is one proof that there's a very large storehouse of energy in radiant matter. Radiant matter meaning in radioactive material. That was the old name that Tesla called it, Mori called it. Can we dim the lights here? What I have here is I have a source of tritium gas from a nuclear reactor. And, well, tritium gas, the disintegrations can't go through a piece of toilet paper. It's very low level stuff. But yet, this light will light for tritium has a half-life of about 13 years, and then in 13 years, the intensity, well, you can't see it very well but because of the lights, but it will, half that intensity will be gone in 13 years. However, if we use radon gas, it'll be very intense. You know, we can make it brighter than that. But half intensity, it'll be half lit, 1,600 years. So you tell me what kind of a source of energy this is. Greatest storehouse of energy that we've been given, but we choose to use it to destroy. And that's why we're at a point of stagnation. But we need this source now more than ever. The population is exploding. You know, I can tell you, I'm sure you know of some of the things that are going on in our world, people starving, and, you know, we have technology. This shouldn't be happening. We should be evolving, and it's only going to happen when we have this source of energy and we use it not to destroy, but to do good things with. And we do it by doing it nature's way, not our way. Anyway, this is the result of, this is high frequency energy. The circuit diagram for this is in my book. You can see this is against federal communications restrictions. I'm not going to have it on very long. It's because I'm using very old 1930s radio tubes. However, I show a diagram in my book where I put a radon gas source in there, and I don't need to plug in. If you look at the design closely, you know, it's the fuel source is radon gas. However, I've gone away from the tube design and gone into these dischargers, and because, you know, they give off a lot of heat with the radon gas, it even turns into heat. You know, most of it's going in the form of heat. But why I brought this here today is I want to show the effects of the output of high frequency that the Gray device put out, and Mori device put out, contrary to what I've been hearing on the internet, that the output is the energy source. It's nonsense. The output is due to the tank circuit and resonance of the circuitry. That was just the output. Really strange is Mori's lights and motors will run on 6 kilohertz. That's written in, it's taken out of the 5th edition, but it's left in the 2nd edition. It says the motors were 6 kilohertz. And by coincidence, I've got some documents from the Edwin Gray company from the 1970s, and he was marketing a inverter type, you know, for camping, going camping, and you know, he had his discharge tube that was in it, and by coincidence, I don't know if it's such a coincidence, but the frequency was the same frequency that Mori's device was outputting, 6 kilohertz, and in the company documents, it never says that there's all the unity or he's extracting energy out of the air. All he's saying is with his efficient system, you could take a battery with you camping and you know, run lamps or light bulbs or whatever you need to power. With his system, you could the battery would last 4 times longer. It's 4 times more efficient. In other words, it was less wasteful. Instead of producing all kinds of heat, it's just producing light, say. Anyways, this is high frequency. No, this is in the megahertz range. That's why it's fooling around with the TV here. I couldn't get the 6 kilohertz because it would require a lot of windings. And I've been looking for a big audio transformer that would probably do the job for me. But this is strange because when you short it out, that's a 100-watt light bulb. I don't want to blow it up either. But I can touch these leads real quick. I won't get shocked. Why I'm not keeping my fingers on there is because if I keep my fingers on there long enough, my fingers are going to get burned thermally from the high frequency. But this is how Edwin Gray was able to place the light bulb into water, because as you can see, I can get a glass of water here and put it in the water, nothing happens. I can even pour salt into that water, make it very conductive, nothing will happen. It's because of the nature of this current. And Nikola Tesla taught us this, that high frequencies travel through gas better than through wires. And also, contrary to what people are saying, this is not high voltage, this is low voltage. But using radon in these tubes, instead of using radio tubes, this will be self-sustaining. And I plan on demonstrating this concept. Hopefully, I'm going to have the setup ready for October. I've got to go down to Texas, and Kelvin Bowman has a good spot on his property. He has a big, long wire hung up, and the energy's coming in so intense that you can see the wire vibrating, and you touch the wire, and it's really warm to the touch. And of course, he developed a transducer type thing so you could hear this energy and record it on tape. Very interesting to listen to the energy, because Mori described it as it sounded like waves of the ocean coming in regular pulses. Well, if you listen to this antenna through this transducer, it sounds exactly like that. And you know, sometimes the sound varies by different increments. You know, you hear weird sounds, and it's probably because of solar activity. But I had that tape analyzed by Bell Labs. Really interesting. The peak frequency that's coming in on that antenna is 925 hertz. That's the frequency that Tesla most often used with his transmitter, his magnifying transmitter, because he believed at that frequency the Earth created standing waves to that frequency, and he could transmit around the globe without any, or very little loss, because of standing wave frequency. Now, he wasn't generating RF. He used a reverse principle, and he was using electrostatic energy to conduct through the Earth. It was conduction, and that's contrary to some of the rumors I've been hearing going around. And you heard it through Arthur Matthew briefly through that tape that it was convection currents. Unfortunately, at the end of that tape, somehow got cut off, and he explained it a little bit more at the end of the tape, but he explained that the energy was being conducted through the Earth. As a matter of fact, there's documents between Tesla's patent attorney and Tesla that show that it clearly show that he kept down the RF to a very minimum, and that the RF just got wasted in the air, and the electrostatic energy went right through the Earth with very little loss. You could tune a receiver someplace and light up a circuit with the transmitter. And basically what happened, 925 hertz, very low. It supposedly creates the standing waves in the Earth, and I find that very interesting, because the peak frequency on Kelvin's antenna is that exact frequency. So that gives validity to what Tesla was saying.
What's in the box?
What's in the box is exactly the circuit that I put in the book, and you can look in there. And this thing is a capacitor, 2 coils, inductively tuned to the main tank circuit. And there's a transformer in there. I believe it's 600 volts, but that can be taken out and replaced with your radiant energy system. But the amount of power that you're going to extract from a certain area is, I believe, is dependent on the amount of radon in the ground. And the only way to conclusively prove that is to actually do some radon testing. And I'm going to get around to doing that. I have so many things on the slate, but the most important thing for me right now is at least to get this type of discharger out, so people can, if they want to just hook up a Tesla coil and see how efficient it is using this. And this acts as a heat sink. When you're passing power through there is some heat buildup, and the reason for that is so that you don't break down a spark gap, and that's why it was designed. It was designed as a very fast discharger, and hopefully you guys will be able to peek in there and see what's happening. Now, don't be afraid that what I'm generating through here is I'm rectifying it through this little component that I designed. What's coming out here is completely high frequency energy. I want to make sure this is discharge. Yeah, see, and that still can give you a nice jolt. Very little current in there, but it's enough to, you can hit your head on something, cause some real trouble. Actually, I've got to take that away because when this is running, sometimes that will build up a charge anyway, even though it's not connected. Okay. Whoa, it's too high. See, this is a very good power supply to be experiment with. See, that's high frequency, high voltage. And I'm going to use it to go through the tube here. What's that? Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I have to set this up first. Okay. Make sure that's on ground. Oh, okay. And, this is very crude because if this is even glued together, the way I have it in there, it's very finely tubed to the, in here the rod that's going through is finely tubed. If I knock it in, I can knock out the adjustment. And what I want to do is when I sell these, I want to make sure that it's not going to be knocked out of adjustment. It's going to be a very professional device and well worth what you pay for it, and do something practical. Okay, if I do that, you're not going to be able to see it. Here I run the risk of, and even here I have to tune that. In Gray's circuitry, some of his control devices were all to get the optimum. It's like you'll see in there, and I first saw this many years back, the effect, when I had a plexiglass plate underneath. I looked in between, I could see this lightning effect. And that's exactly what's happening in here. It's like lightning, it's a vortex in here. And it's not, you'll see that it's not completely symmetrical. It's because there's some burrs in there. And also, I'm going to work that out. I'm going to have the inside tube very highly polished. And the center rod through there is going to be very smooth and symmetrical. So all you'll get in there is a complete nice vortex. And maybe even Gray wasn't aware how he can improve that discharge tube. But very efficient discharge tube is very important to a self-sustaining radiant energy device, because if you don't get it just right, you're going to... Another good aspect of this is when this is grounded, whatever's going on there is shielded. And I haven't gone to another aspect yet, is you can put a diode through here and recover that, which Gray was doing, and I don't have that here, but you recover some of the discharge, put it back into the battery, just so you're not wasting it. You want everything designed to complete efficiency. Okay, now I have that on. If I leave that on here without the air going through there, it goes a little bit, but it starts to get hot and it's going to eventually burn out, especially with high wattage. But my new design is putting a little bit of air through that, and I get more efficiency. I don't need that second spark gap, and it draws very, very little energy, which essentially that will eventually come from a battery, or in the case of radiant energy, back storage capacitors. Because once you start the device, that's why Mori, he had to give it a little pulse in there, because he had to draw up that radon to the ground. Sometimes, depending on the area, it could take him a half hour to get that thing going before the, my conclusions are he drew enough radon to that ground rod. And there's also, I back this up by, I reference in my book, and on the website, you don't have to buy the book. You can go to my website and see this, stuff for free, and I give references. I've read through all the Mori materials. I've had access to some of the notes that that other people haven't seen. I even had the luck, and I remember thinking one day that, boy, if only I had those Mori tubes, I can confirm that my research was going in the right direction. I didn't need them, but there's always that nagging thought: did I really do what he did? Well, I get a email from a doctor saying that he has these tubes of Mori, and the way he explained them, he's an older gentleman. He's almost 90 years old now. The way I didn't understand his language, I thought they were empty tubes, and so I think another year passed before he emailed me again, and I almost gave up the opportunity then too. But then he went. Those are his experimental tubes and the electrodes in there. He says, "Wow!" At first, I thought they were the electrotherapeutic tubes, but they weren't. They were the actually radiant energy tubes. That it's not that the tubes in the electrotherapeutic patents, like John Mori said, those aren't the tubes. These tubes are it. And the surprising thing that I found was these particular tubes didn't have any radiation in them. And all of Mori's team members, some of them still alive, his photographers still alive I talk to once in a while, they all told me that in his later devices he didn't use any radioactive material. But the problem is, and Mori didn't realize this, is in the end he was using synthetic radiation. And I don't know if I should say too much yet, but he could create radiation artificially with some of the ores. It was induced radiation with a certain wavelength of energy, and he was producing the synthetic radiation that he was producing decay products, but the decay products weren't enough to say give out 4 kilowatts like his other device did using the Moire Swedish stone. But he thought his energy was coming from the decay of the radium, or the stuff coming out of the Swedish stone, which he determined later was slightly radioactive. And the reason for that is the induced material that he was using did not produce radon gas. And that's why I've had physicists, nuclear scientists tell me, in order to get that much energy out of that device, you'd have to be exposed to a tremendous amount of radiation. That's true. But radon gas will react and turn into electricity directly without producing these emissions. There's the key, and I don't think Mori knew that. He didn't have enough time left in his life to, filter that out. He's so big. His family went through very horrible things. He shot at a couple times. I don't think that was to suppress the invention. That was because the Mori Products Company ran into problems with investors. And it wasn't because T.H. Mori was an inventor and he was into the research. The problem is the people who were running the company was doing these things behind Mori's back, and one of the investors was really mad and lost his money and shot at him. He got shot at a couple times. But when Mori died, the family has gone through some horrible times, and John Mori has become very bitter, and for good. I can see for good reason, because even myself, what I'm going through now is that you cannot begin to imagine what happens to me during the week. Some of the phone calls I get, the rotten emails, people just trying to discredit me. I get very bitter at times, and but this man and the whole family, they're older now, and they're just spiritually destroyed. Everybody that's becomes friends, they're doing it for reason, just to get the secrets out of them. But anyway, what I'm trying to get to here is the widow, Mrs. Moire, when everybody was going off to the funeral, she junked everything. And but one case survived, and that was given to Stan Mahuan. And the Stan Mahuan in that box was, oh, I wish I could see that, those lab notes, but it's 24 pages of very condensed lab notes. Everything was in there. And but Stan Mahuan kept that, and he was a radio tube salesman at the time. He still didn't know what the heck these tubes did. So he gave them to another friend, which is a doctor, and he examined people's, he was a consultant to attorneys that wrote patents for people. And military, you know, he was the best. I don't want to mention his name because he doesn't want to know people that know his identity, because, you know, when you do this type of stuff, you get all kinds of people down on you. And I mean, there's a lot of good people, and that's what makes this worth it for me. And this is why I do conferences. I'm always asked, you know, why do you do conferences? Well, it's because I want, once a year, it's like a vitamin pill for me. It gives me motivation for the rest of the year, you know, to live through all these negative things that come your way. And I think if the Mori family would have done that, then, you know, they would be less bitter today. But anyways, the wife, you know, she was just tired of it, and that's why she got rid of the stuff. Well, of course, John Mori to this day thinks the lab was broken into and these items were stolen, but you know, the wife junked the stuff. But luckily, I had the tubes, and you know, I've still come to this point without the tubes, but there's certain aspects of the tubes that I can't really reveal at this time, because it's not because I want to keep it from you, but there's certain people out there that I don't feel are responsible enough if it in the wrong hands could do more harm than good. There's certain aspects of Mori's research that he never published anywhere, and well, you draw your own conclusions what, you know, this is all about. But you know, perhaps one day I'll be able to reveal it when, you know, this, you know, an aspect of this work gets out. So what I should do here is, you know, instead of rambling on, it's important that I show you what's happening in these tubes, and what I'm saying is real. I just saw this effect myself. Actually saw it before I left. I had like 2 weeks to get ready for this, not enough time. I really didn't think I was coming. Even this case here, you know, I had these parts all over my workbench, and I had to design this case in 2 days and, you know, get it onto the box so I could put it on the plane. But anyways, when I was fooling around with this, you know, tweaking it last minute there, I accidentally left that side off, because I was also using this as ozone generator for my ozone fuel cells, and which at this point, and that's a spin-off. There's many spin-offs of this research, and it's been distracting me. And after this conference, I've decided just to focus on radiant energy. Although there's one aspect of the ozone thing. There's a company that called me, and they want to use it in aluminum ozone cells, and you know, I'll be a consultant for them with 3 years. It's not going to take up all my time, but you know, every once in a while I think of you know, about the ozone aluminum cell, and I'll get a royalty from that. And with that, then I can progress with the radiant energy without you know, taking anybody's money. You know, because you know, if you take anybody's money, there's a price to pay, and usually you end up losing. You know, they get 51% control. Might as well forget it. And a lot of people made that mistake. A lot of people have promised, you know, territories and everything before the product's out. You can't do that. You know, it has to be developed. And I learned that when I sold the experimental ion glow regulators. You know, I put out about 5 of them for people to experiment with, and I offered a 30-day money-back guarantee. But this power supply wasn't completely up to snuff, and I didn't know at the time. It was only producing about 5,000 volts, and I find out because of that mistake what the limit of this particular diameter of this tube is. And at 5,000 volts, and the proof of concept circuit is in my book again. It's also on the website. Without the glow regulator, you can see 5,000 volts. With the glow regulator on there, and it was polarity sensitive one way, there was no current flow. The other way, there was current flow. And through the spark gap, with the glow regulator on, you could see 20,000 volts. It was 4 times gain, and I find it interesting because these motors here supposedly have a 4 times energy gain. And I believe he emailed me one time a configuration. I don't remember what it is. It might have been a splatter coil thing, and but it looked like a different configuration to me as the principle, the ion glow regulator. So there is some kind of factor in there that's making a multiplication of 4. I don't know what it is. I do have a theory that I know for a fact that all metals contain trace impurities of radioactive material, and when you're exciting that, the radon gas is going to be released, and that very well could be the gain from the metals. I don't know that conclusively, but also the spark thickness got brighter, and I measured it on a scope, and the oscillations on the scope were completely very pure and clean sine wave, and with the glow regulator in there, the current dropped down to like 1/4 of an amp rather than using 3 amps. So that to me represents more than a 4 energy gain, because you have to take the amperage drop and times it by how much voltage is coming on. That's a multiplication factor more than, and I believe that's in line with what Shinsky's figures were showing. Anyways, I'm rambling on again. Huh? What's that? You'll get an effect, but the important thing is here is you have to have a material that's producing radon gas. In my book, I show 3 different radon gases. U-238 produces a radon gas that is radon 222, which has a half-life about 3.5 days. But the problem with using that type of radon gas is that it turns into lead. The final decay state is stable lead. Thorium you'll get more energy out of it because it has a faster decay rate. I believe that's 56 seconds, right around there. And U-235 even has a faster decay rate. I don't remember those figures, but it's in the book. I'm not really a numbers and figures guy. That's why I have to, well, even if I gave my own numbers and figures out, who's going to believe me? I've got to have these guys that, like this guy from Bell Labs, that's retired, ready for retirement, and people are going to believe his measurements. He brings in the equipment. He's not going to lie, and I need that kind of validation. That's the next step where I'm going to. But I've got so much things when I really got to focus on where my heart is right now, and that's radiant energy, and start getting the first things out. And I also believe that's how a nuclear reactor's working today as far as getting heat out of it, is because when they're splitting, they're producing some radium sometimes, and the radium is producing the radon gas. But you don't have to produce the radioisotopes that are deadly, if only you do it nature's way. If you don't, you don't split the atoms like you do in a nuclear reactor, then you'll be all set. And you can either produce heat like they do in a nuclear reactor, or you can get electricity directly out. And it all depends on what the radon gas is reacting with. Okay, I don't know if anybody that you want to see inside here, what you want to do is, this side is the ground side anyways. This is where the high voltage is. And I suggest only people that are familiar with, high voltage power supplies. That, it's up to you. The disclaimer I'm making: if you get zapped, I can't be responsible for what happens. It's very low current, but if you have a weak heart, maybe you could have a heart attack or hit your head someplace. If you want to see this, it's going to be at your own risk. What's that? Okay. I don't think you can get the camera near it, but. Yeah, well, I'm not plugged in. There's 2 D-cell batteries in there, and This will last for hours. It's very efficient as compared to Gray's discharge. And you know, I've got another improvement coming up, but I'm going to wait until it becomes commercial, and you know, if somebody wants to take it apart, them, you know, go ahead. You know, if you want to reproduce them, go ahead too. You know, I'm sure once this gets out, it's going to be a big market. This is going to have other applications. It's probably going to take some time before technicians find other applications, but once they do, they're going to rather buy these from me than, you know, make them themselves. So, you know, I'm not going to get a patent. I find the patent system is just a way just to slow you down. Okay. Yeah, I got some leakage here. So I thought would happen. Okay. Now, Larry, I guess wants first dibs here. No? Oh, you can see it? Okay, if you want a single file, don't all bunch up, because you won't get to see it. You know, form a line, and yeah, right around here. And if any of you want to see what happens without the little bit of air in there, ask me. I'll do it quick. I don't want to burn out the electrode by, you know, because it will heat up. But with this, the way it's going now, it won't heat up. Oh, I don't have any radon in here. I couldn't bring it on the plane. No, just very little airflow. You don't need much. It's ozone in there. But once see, you can see it's not symmetrical in there, but once I have it polished and I have a symmetrical rod in there, it's going to be a nice little, essentially this is a solid state rotary spark gap, if you know, for, you know, the best term for it. You don't need the mechanical spark gap, and a lot more, it's a lot better than a rotary. Yeah.
What's the energy going here? Just battery power?
Yeah.
And you can substitute this with the battery power with radon gas and a rod and ground?
Right. I don't know if you get that with a flash.
You never know. Towards the dry.
But with this system, I'm not saying you can do it, but I think it may be possible to feed this through a high frequency tank circuit and light up light bulbs very efficiently.
Have you done it?
I haven't. I'm so scattered. That's the next step. Well, there's a couple next steps.
Parallel with that device then?
Right. You know, to a tuned tank circuit like here.
Oh, to change the frequency?
No, but for the discharger. In other words, if I can discharge very efficiently. See, when you have one quick discharge, you're getting rid of all the energy at once and getting off as heat and RF.
Oh, so you want to spread it out so it's more...
Exactly.
So it's not
Spread-
going up and down like this, but it's slow.
Like if you look in there, it's like lightning. And Edward Gray was saying the same thing. You know, he was harnessing, the device was working like lightning works. And if you look in there,
There's no electrode in there? This is like, what is it?
there's a rod in there.
It's the rod?
Can't see it.
Oh, you can almost see that.
Yeah, right? Without the flash.
But you have to probably get it more head on.
Yeah.
If you look in there, you can see a halo effect.
A halo effect?
Yeah, it's like a halo.
So you said the real purpose of this is it contains spark gap.
It's a very efficient way to,
Yes,
to discharge.
I agree, it is.
And I think it's going to outperform
And
any
it's
tube,
shielded, right?
and
So we could
shielded.
use it, it wouldn't cause any problems. because
Exactly.
The other one does.
And like I say, you can go through a diode and
Yeah.
feed the
That's
loss
great.
through.
What do you think you're going to sell it for?
I don't know right
You know,
now.
you have to make it first.
It'll be reasonable.
I've seen your page.
Oh, okay.
I've been following for years.
And if
Not
somebody
like
doesn't
meeting
like it,
the
they can
people.
return it.
Oh,
No problem.
sounds like a-
Matter of fact, when I thought there was a problem when I redesigned my power supply and I burnt out the central
Yeah.
electrode, I was willing to replace them. It's been like 6 months later,
yeah.
you know, because I'm saying, well, if these aren't working like I say, then I'm going to return their money.
It's the same thing as the spark gap.
Yeah.
Not the same thing. A spark gap is very inefficient, gives off all kinds of RF.
As far as interrupting the coil.
This is a step beyond the rotary spark gap. This is a solid state rotary spark gap. That's exactly what Edwin Gray was doing, but I've taken it a step further, and there's another step I can take further. I don't need this air if I place a little bit of radon emissive material in there. Then I don't even need this.
Right.
But people are so afraid of radiation that I want to get this out the way it is to show
Well,
what's going on here. One step at a time. That's all I can do.
The alpha particles wouldn't get escape outside
Would-
the tube.
But then I need an exemption
Yeah.
to do that. Like
It's better not to get it.
Is this the
Yeah.
with the wire?
yeah.
Because realize alpha particles
It's better
is
not to get
stopped
the
by
wire.
tissue
Yeah.
failure.
Well, that's a rod actually.
Should I go get Sunny?